Welcome into the Rooster Rant. It is December 1st, 2024. Yesterday, on the last day of November, South Carolina went up to that team in the upstate that wears orange and won 17-14. With this latest outcome, Clemson's record against South Carolina now stands at 73, 44, and 4. Since the turn of the millennium, these two teams have faced off 24 times, with Clemson holding a 15-9 edge. However, under Dabo Swinney's leadership, the Palmetto Bowl rivalry has seen Clemson lead the series 9-7. Years ago, you might remember, Dabo Swinney remarked that this game would never truly become a rivalry, suggesting that his kids' grandkids wouldn't witness it. Well, the truth is, it's always been a rivalry. Always has been. Unfortunately for Dabo, the tide is shifting during his tenure at Clemson, with the Gamecocks gaining momentum. When Dabo took over as interim head coach, Clemson boasted a 63.3 win percentage against South Carolina. But Dabo's win percentage against South Carolina is 56.2%. No disrespect to Dabo. He has 2 national championships, while South Carolina has yet to claim their first. But let's not overlook Shane Beamer. He's now 2-2 against Dabo and the Tigers, despite being the underdog. Beamer's Gamecocks have secured 2 victories in a stadium that may soon feature a statue of Dabo. So let's dive into how the Gamecocks pulled off this impressive win against Clemson in what is undoubtedly one of college football's best rivalries. Alex, if you'll roll the credits.
It's time to look back one final time at this week's Gamecock football game. It's Rooster Rant with Alex Jones and Matt Anderson
from the Chief Sports Network.
Well, let's get down to it, Alex. Gamecocks, big win, a must win in what Clemson fans refer to as Death Valley, but Gamecock fans refer to as Memorial Stadium. So, Alex, you were there. We're going to break all of this down. Gamecocks have now reeled off 6 consecutive wins to end their season, finishing 9-3 in the regular season. LaNorris Sellers continues to be superhuman. I have no idea how he does what he does on a routine basis. We're going to talk all about that. But I want to start this show out with a couple of news items here. Not really news items, but things that we need to talk about. You look at the game, Alex, and Gamecock fans, players, coaches, everybody celebrated around the state. But I think that it was really fun for those Gamecocks who did make the trek up to Clemson, South Carolina. I know that Clemson allotted 9,000 tickets to Gamecock fans. I feel like the Gamecocks probably had more than 9,000 fans in attendance. They were loud on TV, I can tell you that. But how loud were those Gamecock fans in the stadium?
Oh, they were loud. I mean, pretty much the whole game, especially there at the end when, South Carolina or Demetrius, or first when LaNorris Sellers scored that game-winning touchdown, and then Demetrius Knight, picked that ball up off the ground pretty much for the interception. And yeah, I mean, they had that corner where the top left corner was really full, and then all there were different spots around the stadium that were full as well of South Carolina fans, and they were treated to one heck of a game and left Memorial Stadium pretty happy.
Yeah, and South Carolina fans, as I mentioned at the top of this show, there's only been 44 of these days, whether it's in Columbia, whether it's in Clemson. So Gamecock fans do deserve to have the spoils. As they say, Alex, to the victor goes the spoils. I know that there was a little bit of stuff I've seen on social media about Clemson fans and Clemson players taking a little bit of offense to Gamecock fans going on the field after the game. But the images that came out of that, both from fans and players, I think just unleashed what a lot of Gamecock fans were feeling. And if you have an open field policy after the game, you really can't get too upset when the other team goes on your field. Alex, thoughts about that?
I think it's all just you see it in every rivalry. I mean, think about what you saw, throughout the country yesterday with, planting the flag, things in midfield, and it's just what I think honestly what makes rivalry great. And I thought I don't really have an issue with it, and it goes both sides. I mean, we've seen it both ways here when Clemson wins and South Carolina wins. So I think that type of stuff, I think, is just what makes this past week of football great.
Yeah, and I think in this era of social media and camera phones and everything, this stuff's been going on for a long time. And there were plenty of things that Gamecock fans saw last year when Clemson won 16-7 at Williams-Brice Stadium that kind of went viral. And that's why you see all these hype videos that fans are putting out and players are putting out and media departments are putting out, because now there's just the footage of it. So I wouldn't sit here and say that I would be too offended. I wasn't offended last year when Clemson did it at South Carolina. I'm not offended that South Carolina did it at Clemson. But for the next 365 days of the year, regardless of what happens in basketball, obviously the Gamecock women have already destroyed the Clemson Tigers on the basketball court for like the 18th consecutive year. But in South Carolina, football is still king. Basketball and baseball hold a special place, especially baseball, for a lot of Gamecock fans and a lot of Tiger fans. But for the next 365 days, Gamecock fans have a lot to crow about.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be something that is going to be brought up year round, like as you mentioned, and just I know we'll dive into more of the in-game stuff here a little bit later, but just what a great job by South Carolina in that game to kind of battle off some things in that game. Had battle off some turnovers, turnover problems early in the game, and then just what a great win for South Carolina to kind of continue to boost their resume. Which again, it's more of what we'll get into later, but all the talk surrounding the Gamecocks now is a 6-game winning streak and, hopes of finding a way to get an at-large bid.
Yeah, let's go ahead and we'll break down the game. And a game like this, a game of this magnitude for the state of South Carolina, I do think kind of needs to be delved into quarter by quarter instead of glossing over some of the finer details. Alex, in the game starts, LaNorris Sellers and the Gamecocks seem to be having a lot of momentum offensively. 6-play, 51-yard drive ends with LaNorris Sellers' fumble. I know that Gamecock fans on message boards and social media were just really upset. It kind of felt like the Gamecocks were rolling, and here come the turnover woes and, the chicken curse, all of that kind of stuff. But, it's one of those things. The next possession, Clemson got the ball after LaNorris Sellers' fumble, and the defense did what they've done all year. They forced a Clemson punt. After that, Clemson forced another punt for the Gamecocks. And then at the end of the first quarter, I think this is a momentum shifting part of the game. Clemson goes 85 yards in 10 plays, has a 4th and 2 from inside their own 20-yard line, decide to go for it. They bring that jumbo package in. And it's one of the things that we talked about on our show last week. And I talked about inside the Gamecocks as well. Was Clemson going to make this a 4-down type of game where all 4 downs are going to be used? And I think early on, that was Clemson's mindset. And kudos to this defense again for stepping up, not only when you had the turnover by LaNorris Sellers on the fumble, but also stopping Clemson on 4th down. Just your thoughts on the first quarter. Ended up in a 0-0 tie.
Yeah, it was kind of a game that, a first quarter that you could have seen many, momentum shifts. So you talk about South Carolina having that drive and getting down into plus territory and then having the fumble. But then, they always talk about playing complementary football, and the defense, as you mentioned, goes right out there and forces a 3 and out. That's kind of one of the things about this game. So we kind of went into this game saying South Carolina couldn't have the critical turnovers, and they did have a few in this one. But the big stat in this game is off of those 3 turnovers, Clemson got no points off of them. And so that's, you talk about momentum shifting moments in a game. Those 3 turnovers could have been in a sold out stadium that's a raucous atmosphere. It could have been momentum shifting, but the defense stepped up and didn't allow that to happen. And that 4th down stop, I think it counts as a turnover, but Clemson could have gotten points if they kicked a field goal, but they decided to go for it and get the stop. And I think that kind of just set the tone really for the game, where the defense was going to find ways in that game to kind of limit what Clemson could do offensively. I know we'll kind of talk about some other things defensively that they did in the game, but I thought the defense, complementary football is what that team talks about, and the defense showed that early in the first quarter, kind of battling that off that first turnover.
Oh, if I'm your, we might both be frozen. But Alex, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I got you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the big things that I thought about, just looking at the final score, I guarantee you Clemson would have liked to have those 3 points there and, potentially going for a game-winning field goal instead of a game-tying field goal or a game-winning touchdown at the end of the game. But I was constantly scrolling thebigspur.com and reading the game thread, and everybody was on pins and needles. But, you move to that second quarter after Clemson goes for a fourth down, doesn't get it. Gamecocks go 3 plays and punt. Gamecocks wanted to, play complementary football like you talk about all the time and say, okay, well, defense just stopped them, offense go out and do something. Didn't happen. Clemson drives down the field in 57 yards, and Cade Klubnik scrambles for a 13-yard touchdown to give Clemson a 7-0 lead. It's one of the things in the game that I was watching out for with Cade, because he does have those legs. Seems to have a knack for the big time scramble. And I'll tell you what, on TV, I don't know what it looked like in the stadium, but it sounded like for the next 5 minutes, Cade Klubnik kind of let the entire stadium knew how he felt about that play. Which, look, I'm all for players showing emotion on the field. That's what you should do in a big game like this, in a game that, evidently Dabo's grandkids aren't going to live long enough to see it be a rivalry. Evidently Cade Klubnik thinks it's a rivalry, and that must come from the top down. But Gamecocks answer with a touchdown of their own, a 6-play, 75-yard drive. LaNorris scrambles for a 25-yard touchdown. And at that point of the game, Alex, it kind of seemed like dueling quarterbacks. Anything you can do, I can do better. Which is pretty cool to see. The rest of the second quarter ended with teams trading punts. The game was tied 7-7 at halftime. And, you and I were texting back and forth during halftime, trying to figure out which team had momentum. And I'll tell you one thing, and I'm going to give a plug to 24/7 Sports before we kind of close out talking about this first half. But one of the great things about 24/7 Sports, if you're a member of the Big Spur, you can go read any other message board that's out there for any other team. So I was going back and forth between both websites, and I don't think either team felt good about the first half, at least the fan bases. But so Alex, 7-7 at halftime, what was going through your mind, and what was that mood in the press box?
Yeah, kind of good. We were talking about that. I wasn't really sure who had the momentum in that one. I think you could probably lean South Carolina just because of the early kind of turnover that they did let the game get away from. But at the same time, South Carolina had opportunities, I think, to kind of maybe extend that lead a little bit early in the first half. But it kind of got to the point where at that point you get to the halftime and it's 0-0, and it's just restart. You got 2 quarters left, and you need to make a big statement, and they find a way to do that in that game.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting. The coin toss, Clemson won the coin toss, deferred to the second half. So at halftime, everybody in the stadium, everyone in the state of South Carolina knew that Clemson was going to get the ball back. 7-7 game, opportunity for momentum. We'll get to that into a moment. But did you make anything of that, Alex? I'm a big fan of deferring to the second situation, especially if you're the home team and you're the team that's favored to win the game. I think that you make the other team prove it. But did you take anything from Clemson's decision to not try and set the tone of the game early by taking the ball and trying to do something with it, especially with that decision that the Clemson coaching staff had to go for it on fourth down early in the game?
Yeah, I think you can look at it both ways. You want to send the offense out there, and if we're looking at it from Clemson's side, send the offense out there and try to, get past or make a statement early and set the tone. I think also you can kind of, when you think about it from that way, you can think of, well, maybe, with South Carolina's defense and the way they played, let's maybe not try to, not have any momentum offensively early on the game, and let's see if our defense can go out there and make a big play and kind of gain that momentum. So, I didn't see, I wasn't surprised by by Clemson, deferring to the second half. At that point, you're 7-7 in the game, and Clemson gets the ball, and then for Clemson's side, you have a chance to take an early lead, which didn't happen.
Yeah.
Which, didn't happen, but I mean, just from looking at it from that standpoint.
Yeah, and to be honest, I was watching the game with some Gamecocks and talking to them about the game, and I personally think when that happened, like regardless of the coin flip, if that was going to be Clemson's decision, I think that Shane would have taken the ball. I think that that's the mindset that he plays with, and obviously they had a game plan rolling just for their first drive of the game, and could have easily gotten points on that possession had the ball not gotten ripped out of LaNorris Sellers' hands. But moving on to the third quarter, Clemson opens with an 11-play, 75-yard touchdown drive. It ended in another Cade Klubnik kind of scramble for a touchdown. And at that point, I think that it looked like Clemson had kind of seized some momentum and seized some control, especially when you look at the next couple drives. Gamecocks go 4 plays and 41 yards, but Rocket Sanders puts the ball on the ground for a second Gamecock fumble. I can tell you from Gamecock message boards that Gamecock fans were getting very, very ornery at this point in the game.
Yeah.
But it's something that's happened in a lot of these Carolina Clemson games, especially of late. Clemson finally turned the ball over on their next drive, and it was another situation that, when you go look at the Clemson message board, they're pretty upset about why are coaches trying to run a gadget type play in that situation when you have momentum, just get points, get another touchdown, got all the momentum in the world. Video replay was huge for South Carolina. I think 2 times in the game, calls that were made on the field that were reversed into the Gamecocks' favor. Obviously that doesn't happen a lot for the Gamecocks. But as Steve Spurrier used to say, sometimes God smiles on the Gamecocks, and he was certainly smiling on them on those 2 video reviews. Gamecocks again, though, could not capitalize on the turnover, going 6 plays and -6 yards to punt again. To end that third quarter, there was kind of like a mix of change of possession. But, talk about that third quarter, Alex, and, what your thoughts were after the Gamecocks put the ball on the ground yet again, but then that massive play to give the Gamecocks some momentum back.
Yeah, so when Clemson, went up 14-7 to start the half, and then you had the Raheem Sanders fumble, you kind of felt like maybe in the stadium, it felt like obviously Clemson had all the momentum, but you felt like that was going to be the turning point in the game. If Clemson could go down there and drive the field and score and get a 2-score lead, I think you kind of wondered, because we hadn't seen the offense kind of get going yet. At that point, you kind of wondered, can South kind of overcome this, get 14 points in this game to tie the game at the very least. But, Clemson gets the drive going, and then really, you kind of said, I don't know why they went to that play. They did the little, reverse play. I don't think they really needed to at that moment. They were driving and just don't switch from what's going. But, if you're South Carolina, you're thankful they did, because they, you lost momentum on that play. And, it's kind of interesting. I when they were replaying that, I thought it was going to be called down. I didn't really consider the part of the running back not having possession of the ball, but I can see that too. But that was a big momentum shifting play again in that game, and South kind of found a way to recover that ball, and a heads up play for them to stick with the play on that and recover it, and kind of seize momentum again.
Yeah, you go to the fourth quarter. I think the Gamecocks started to kind of figure some stuff out personally. You saw Josh Simon come in line a little bit more, or at least close by in motion. And the running lane started opening for LaNorris Sellers, and not that they hadn't been open the entire game, because he had some big runs, but I mean, he's like Superman in a phone booth. I mean, he's hard enough when you got 3 defenders around him and he's the only one there. But when you start giving him blockers and he can somehow squeeze his 6'4", 245-pound frame through, he's almost like a snake in a lot of ways, the way he can just maneuver through different areas that I couldn't do, and I'm way smaller than him. Crazy. But Gamecock started to figure some things out. Obviously the interception by LaNorris Sellers, that kind of just killed momentum again for the Gamecocks, because it kind of looked like 14-7. Okay, LaNorris is going to get in there. It's going to be 14-14. Going to have 10 minutes to play, and hopefully the Gamecocks find a way to eke it out with a field goal maybe, but it wasn't to be. I think that Nick Harbor and LaNorris Sellers were a little off on that play. I know that LaNorris faced an immense amount of pressure the entire game, but you'd like to see Nick Harbor cut in front there on that play and not give the defender a chance. If anything else, it's probably a pass breakup. But when the defender has a clean lane to the ball, so that happened. And then, God smiled on the Gamecocks again. Clemson goes 3 and out. Gamecocks force another punt. Gamecocks finally get to double digits on the scoreboard. 42-yard field goal by Alex Herrera. Obviously, there were some personal or unsportsmanlike conduct plays that happened there that I think kind of killed that drive from a touchdown perspective. but it's 14-10. And Shane Beamer does Shane Beamer type things and goes for a surprise onside kick. Gamecocks had a lot of opportunities to get that ball. I mean, honestly, didn't go the Gamecocks' way, but it was a perfectly timed call. Sometimes you just have the magic touch there. But Clemson did the Gamecocks plenty of favors there. You had the onside kick, and then Clemson goes 3 and out. They only take a minute off the clock. Gamecocks get the ball with a little under 6 minutes to go, and LaNorris Sellers continues to do what had been working, gets the Gamecocks down and into the red zone, or maybe outside the red zone. I can't remember if there was another unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. I think there was, but you have that pass to Dale Von Campbell in the back of the end zone. The fact that did not warrant even a replay is kind of surprising to me, but it seemed like after that, LaNorris just said, F it, I'll do it myself. And then that next play, that's going to go down in Gamecock lore. I mean, when you're watching Inside the Gamecocks and they're showing the introduction and you're seeing all the great plays in Gamecock football history, that's going to be there forever and for all time. And it's going to be on every Justin King video that's a pregame, during the game, the big moments in Gamecock history. Just a will that is a part of this team. And it reminded me a little bit of Rocket Sanders against Missouri. Similar situation, like, you're not going to deny me this touchdown to win the game. So that happens. There's 1:08 left, and then Clemson gets the ball back, and they make some stuff happen. Some very hairy moments for South Carolina fans. We all know what happens after that. Dylan Stewart, the 5-star prize jewel of last year's recruiting class, gets just enough pressure on Cade Klubnik to make a mistake. If you go back and watch Dabo Swinney's press conference after the game, that is exactly what he was told not to do, according to the coaching staff at Clemson. But in moments like that, I don't want to say deer in the headlights, but you got to make a snap decision. And, maybe you forgot that you had timeout in your pocket. Maybe you didn't want to go down, whatever. Maybe you just didn't want to get hurt. I don't know. But the ball glances off, film off his hands, and Demetrius Knight makes an interception that will also be in every Gamecock highlight forever and always with Justin King, and especially when it comes to this Carolina Clemson game, at least the next 365 days. At that point, the game is over. Gamecocks taking a knee, and LaNorris Sellers throws the ball into the air. Just as iconic to me as Steve Tannehill signing the field. Just a lot of just something released in LaNorris, like I'd never seen it be released, because he's so calm, cool, and collected. Before we get to the final thoughts on that, Alex, let's say that the Campbell touchdown is a touchdown. That's 10 more seconds on the clock. Maybe that's something that was in the Gamecocks' favor. I think that most Gamecock fans would say if the Gamecocks lost the game, that was bullcrap, that cost us the game, blah, blah, blah. But might have been a blessing in disguise. So, Alex, I have talked about the fourth quarter, talked about the third quarter, second quarter, the first quarter. Might be one of the most unlikely wins in South Carolina history, considering the circumstances and what it felt like in Clemson. But I give you the floor now, Alex Jones of thebigspur.com.
Middle of fourth quarter or so, when, especially after that LaNorris Sellers interception, which came, after one of those penalties that you really just can't have, it just seemed like South kind of couldn't get out of its own way sometimes in that game. And, middle of the fourth quarter, they kind of had some of those situations, but, credit one to Alex Herrera. I know he made that kick look easy, but that's not an easy kick to go from 42 yards out, I think, and to knock that straight through and right through the middle. Credit to him. And then, on that last drive, or from an offensive standpoint, South Carolina, just pretty much it came down to, LaNorris helping them drive down the field. And then after the penalty kind of backed him up a little bit more, he just kind of took it in his own hands. And, the way he runs is just incredible. You can watch him on that run, too, when he – right towards the end, he starts cutting left outside. And I can't remember which Clemson player it was, but immediately started – Yeah, he immediately starts kind of trying to get to the boundary right there around the 5-yard line to not let LaNorris Sellers kind of get back to that corner like he did on that first touchdown run. And as soon as that Clemson defender starts running outside, he cuts it up, and there's nobody there to really stop him. And just an incredible play by LaNorris. And then you're right, kind of backing up a little bit on that Dale Von Campbell catch, kind of looking back on it. I hadn't thought about it that way, but if that one does count, Clemson's got a little bit more time to work with on that final drive to, and maybe that changes the game if they have a little bit more time to work with. So, and then defensively, I think it's really fitting for Demetrius Knight to be able to get that interception. He's kind of been the leader of that defense. It's been, he and Kyle Kennard and really all their transfer portal pickups. But, just from Demetrius Knight, from that standpoint, he's brought a ton of leadership to that defense, kind of adding to what they brought back leadership-wise this year. And really fitting for him to get that last interception is really good for him and was a great play, too. Like that was not an easy play to be able to pick that ball up off the ground and had the focus after that ball bounced off of Maffa to pick that ball off. And then he and the rest of the defense ran down the field to celebrate. And, it's just a great win for South Carolina, obviously, to, get back in the win column in that series. But then, from a playoff standpoint, I know we're going to get here to that in a little bit, but that, seems to have done a lot to keep South Carolina right in that playoff picture for a potential berth.
Yeah, I think that the playoff stuff, we'll talk about it. And look, we're going to have a show on Wednesday night. It'll be Alex and I again, 8 o'clock on Wednesday. We'll be able to talk a lot about that because we'll actually have the rankings in front of us and all the scenarios and what the Gamecocks need to have happen. But before we get there, there's not a quarterback in the country I think any Gamecock fan would take right now over LaNorris Sellers. And you really go back to that Alabama game, and LaNorris is 7-1 record, averaging over 300 total yards per game. Really, he cut down on those turnovers, and he's really just maturing right before our eyes. And I can't say enough about him. I can't say enough about the will and the fight of this team and the belief that they have in each other. What Shane Beamer has done in the short amount of time at South Carolina, having the most wins through 4 years of any coach, passing Steve Spurrier. My hat goes off to Shane Beamer, this entire coaching staff, keeping this team together to be where they were at, 3-3, and to rattle off 6 consecutive wins to get to 9-3, have a chance for 10 wins one way or another. It's a special time in Columbia right now. It's a special time for the state of South Carolina, all their fans, players, coaches, everybody involved. So hats off to them. Hats off to what they've been able to achieve. And we're going to take a quick sponsor break. And when we get back, we're going to talk about this playoff picture and where the Gamecocks might fit into it. Welcome back to the Rooster Rant. As always, on Sundays, we are recapping what happened in the week that was. Joe is actually traveling back from out of town for Thanksgiving, so he was not able to get with us today. Everyone knows how these planes are delayed and everything's crazy with travel, especially around the holidays. But we hope Joe gets back safe and sound, and we can't wait to talk with him next week on Sunday. Obviously, next Sunday there will be a lot to talk about when we figure out where the Gamecocks may or may not finish. But looking back, looking forward, looking back, however you want to say it right now, just a little refresher on how the college football playoffs work. I'm still getting used to it myself. It's the first year with 12 teams being in the playoff. And, shortly that's going to go to 14 and it's going to go to 16. And who knows how big it gets by the end of it. But before it's all said and done, or the SEC and Big Ten pull off and make their own super conference. But right now there are 5 auto bids for the 12 teams. Back in the day, we used to talk about a Power 5, but the Pac-12 no longer exists. So it's 4. It's a Power 4, so P4. So you have the 5 highest ranked conference champions in the college football playoff poll. So when you look at that, really it's down to 6 games you're paying attention to this upcoming weekend. Weekend starts on Friday with UNLV and Boise State. UNLV was 22nd in the last college football playoff poll. Boise State was 11th. I don't see anything changing. If anything, they'll go up a little bit. 17th ranked Tulane versus Army. Army is 10-1. Tulane might jump up a little bit in the polls, but I don't think you're going to see Army jump into the top 25. You might, because nothing surprises me with this playoff committee when they want ratings on TV. You might see Army sneak into the top 25. 18th ranked Iowa State faces off against 16th ranked Arizona State in the Big 12 Conference Championship. Then you have 7th ranked Georgia and 3rd ranked Texas in the SEC Championship. 4th ranked Penn State and 1st ranked Oregon in the Big 10 Championship, and then 12th ranked Clemson and 9th ranked SMU. You got to imagine, just looking at the rankings, that you'll probably see the winner of Iowa State, Arizona State, the winner of Georgia, Texas, the winner of Penn State, Oregon, and the winner of Clemson, SMU, getting 4 of those 5. And then with some chaos, if UNLV beats Boise State and Tulane loses to Army, maybe you see UNLV get in there over Boise State, probably as the 12th ranked team in the playoffs. You maybe see Tulane jump that high, but those are going to be the 5 auto bids. And so then after that, you have 7 at-large bids. And those 7 at-large bids will be the 7 highest ranked teams that did not win their conference championship. So when you look at the teams that are not involved in a conference championship right now, and again, with all these rankings, we're going to talk about in a second, but this is last week's rankings. We won't have this week's rankings until Tuesday. 2nd ranked Ohio State, 5th ranked Notre Dame, 6th ranked Miami, 8th ranked Tennessee, 10th ranked Indiana, 13th ranked Alabama, 14th ranked Ole Miss, and then 15th ranked South Carolina. So if you're just looking at that, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams for 7 spots. However, some of the losers of conference championship games still deserve consideration. So I think that the loser of Georgia and Texas is probably in. I could make an argument that Georgia could fall out with 3 losses if they do lose to Texas. My argument would be that Georgia beat Texas at Texas by 15. If they lose to Texas in the conference championship, then they would have regressed from where they were just a couple of weeks ago. And with 3 losses, you join the 3-loss team party. So who knows what will happen there. You can look at 4th ranked Penn State, 1st Oregon. I think Oregon's probably going to be favoring that game, probably going to win that game. But you never know. If Penn State wins that, then I think that Oregon's probably safe.
Yeah.
So, you're knocking off 1, maybe 2 of those 7 at-large bids right then and there. So after that, I don't think the loser of 12th ranked Clemson or 9th ranked SMU will have enough meat on the bone to get into the college football playoffs on their own merit. Now that means, Alex, what does that mean for the ACC?
Yeah. if Clemson or if SMU wins, Clemson's not getting in just because, I mean, they're too far down. If Clemson wins, obviously they're getting in. And then the question becomes, does SMU still get in? So, I think if you're a South Carolina fan, you want SMU, I think, to maybe win this one just to, keep it to where it's going to be a one-bid league from the ACC. You could also look at it the other way of, if Clemson wins, then South Carolina has a win against the ACC champion. So you can kind of look at that either way on that one.
Yeah, and if you just look at what happened in the week that was, we usually talk Gamecocks right now, but it's a lot of fun to be talking about the college football playoffs. So because the Gamecocks are a part of it, a part of the conversation. Ohio State lost to Michigan. Michigan was 6-5. Michigan probably hasn't been that great this year, just overall. So how far does Ohio State fall? It's only their second loss of the season. You go down a little bit further. Yeah. Oregon took care of business. Texas took care of business against Texas A&M. Penn State took care of business against Maryland. Notre Dame took care of business against Southern Cal. Miami, the team that we talked about that was ranked 6th in the college football playoffs, lost to Syracuse. Syracuse now has 8 or 9 wins on the season. How much do they value the ACC? Georgia had a pretty tremendous scare against Georgia Tech. And I think if Georgia had lost that game and then lost the SEC championship, Georgia would probably be out. But, they didn't, and they're not. So
kind of going to Ohio State, like they only dropped 5 spots today in the AP poll. I thought they were going to drop more than that just because Michigan hasn't been great all year, and then you lose to them at home. And, I just thought they'd drop a little bit more than they did. And we'll see. It's not always the same with the college football playoff rankings and the AP poll with Ohio State. But, I was just kind of going to that point. I was surprised they didn't drop further than they did in the AP.
Yeah, you go down to Tennessee. Tennessee got an early scare from Vanderbilt, but pulled away comfortably in that matchup. SMU, they won. Nothing changed there. Indiana, they rolled big against another weak opponent. Boise State won. Clemson lost to South Carolina. Everyone that's on this show watched that. Alabama beat Auburn. Kind of pulled away late, kind of nip and tuck in the first quarter. Ole Miss, same kind of thing. They were down a little bit against Mississippi State, pulled away. And then South Carolina beat Clemson. Again, South Carolina beat Clemson. Then you have Arizona State. Arizona State won their matchup. And I don't think after that anything matters.
Yeah. Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think it's coming down to, from what we've seen, it's for that kind of last spot. Maybe it's really going to be the Alabama and Ole Miss South Carolina trio from the SEC really kind of battling for that last spot or one of the last spots. And, it's just, it's going to be pretty much a whole week of talking about, kind of comparing resumes between those 3 teams and how much is the committee going to weigh head to head, because obviously South Carolina fell to both Alabama, Ole Miss. And, to come Tuesday night, it'll be interesting to see where South Carolina kind of stands with those 3 teams. I think, South Carolina probably jumps. South Carolina's going to jump, I think, Ole Miss and kind of be sandwiched in between Alabama and Ole Miss. But it's going to come down to, I think, just what does the committee value? Do they value a South Carolina team that's won 6 straight, with ranked wins and really good quality wins? And, but do they then on the other side of that, are they going to value the head-to-head more and give the advantage to Ole Miss or Alabama, who has that win against South Carolina? So, I mean, it's going to be pretty much a whole week leading up to that Sunday of talking about, what's going to happen there on that front.
Yeah, it's just so interesting to me because you can get into the nitty-gritty of these rankings as much as you want. And look, when we do the show on Wednesday, Alex and I will make the case. It'll probably be it's probably gonna be all college football playoff talk. We obviously have National Signing Day on Tuesday. Stay tuned to the Big Spur. Obviously Donovan Murph, I believe, is committing tomorrow. Alex, is that still correct?
I don't think it's tomorrow.
Okay. For some reason I thought that was a bowl All-American game or something, but
I'll check real quick.
But no, it's fine. So you'll see who signs with the Gamecocks on Tuesday. And Wednesday, we'll talk all about that. But going back to this college football playoff real quick, Alex, if the committee just in their mind made this poll and truly believed that Clemson was better than Alabama, Ole Miss, and South Carolina, where they had Clemson ranked ahead of Alabama and ahead of Ole Miss, and then 5 days later, South Carolina goes in on the road and beats the team that they thought was better than Alabama and Ole Miss, then it's hard. It's hard for me to figure it out. I'll just be really honest with you guys. It's really hard for me to figure it out. But like I said, we'll have this on Tuesday. I think the show is around 7:30. Usually that's about when they announce it, maybe even closer to 8. I know that it's probably closer to 7:30, Alex, because we were on the show Tuesday night.
I think it's going to be at 7 on Tuesday.
Okay, 7 on Tuesday. So, look, you're going to see how they truly feel about a lot of these teams because brass tacks is coming. And if they penalize Indiana for getting blown out by Ohio State, who's going to drop in the rankings, do they penalize Indiana? So just be looking forward to that poll when it comes out. I think it's going to tell us a lot because I put it this way. If South Carolina is ranked in the top 12 on Tuesday, I foresee them making the college football playoff because there's really not much that can change. They can only go up from 12. If they're 13 or 14, they only jump 1 or 2 spots, then it's okay. What happens in the championship games that changes our opinion? Does Georgia get blown out by Texas by 4 scores? At some point they have to. We're going to talk about it more, but they have to start looking at this with an uneven schedule as every game matters because you can't have Texas playing their second or first toughest game of the year in the conference championship when South Carolina has played 4 games tougher already and won, X amount of them.
Yeah. I think, this year and then moving forward, they're going to have to figure out a way to kind of not even it, but determine how they're going to evaluate that with the uneven schedules. And kind of going back to South Carolina's point, like when they're evaluating South Carolina's resume, do they put a lot of stock into LaNorris Sellers not playing in the second half against LSU? Because, you listen to a whole bunch of not just South Carolina people, but, national people talking. There's confidence that South Carolina would have won that LSU game if LaNorris Sellers hadn't gotten hurt. And you can you can talk about the, late hit or the unnecessary roughness and all that. Do they look at that and do they throw that in there that South Carolina had a great chance to win that game if LaNorris Sellers doesn't get hurt? Do they look at, with common opponents between Alabama and Ole Miss and South Carolina? Alabama obviously has the head-to-head, but South Carolina beat a Vanderbilt team in Nashville that Alabama lost to. Alabama lost to Oklahoma in Norman pretty bad and didn't look good in that game. South Carolina, really controlled that game and dominated that game in Oklahoma. So there's so many different ways that the committee can look at this. And, I think we'll get a good look on Tuesday where they stand. And, as you kind of mentioned, does anything that can happen in the conference championship games kind of, change that from where they're looking at from what we see on Tuesday?
Yeah, it's very important because the reason that I can tell you 67 of the 68 teams that are going to be in the college basketball tournament every year, and I can do it, and everyone can do it that follows it closely, is because there are so many precedents that are set that this team in this situation will not make it based on precedent. And in the first year of a 12-team playoff, it is very important that whatever precedent that they set is right and just and fair, because you're going to see the SEC rip apart their out of conference schedule games, these marquee games for TV, because they're going to want all of their teams in the college football playoff when there's going to be millions of more eyeballs on them, millions more in the college football playoff than there are, on Labor Day weekend or something like that, or, a random Saturday. So I hope that they understand the importance of their decision. And that's not just for South Carolina. That's for any team this year and going forward, because it is a very big deal. And, they need to set a good precedence. And it's not because guess what happens, Alex? In a couple of years, they're going to 14 and then they're going to 16, and they've got to figure this out. So that's going to do it for this show tonight of Rooster Rant. Gamecocks celebrate a big, big win in Memorial Stadium. That's 2 out of 3 in the Palmetto Bowl for Shane Beamer and the Gamecocks. Yeah, we won't count that first year because he didn't have a lot to work with. But 2-1, 2 in a row, Memorial Stadium. LaNorris Sellers is him. He is the truth. He is a freak of absolute nature, and he willed the Gamecocks to victory along with that defense.
On the north side, sorry to interrupt you, but do you think he, and you heard what Shane Beamer said about the Heisman conversation, do you think he's worked his way up? I'm not saying anywhere close the one or two from a poll standpoint, but do you think he's worked himself in a way where he can maybe even get some votes just under consideration?
I think he'll be top 10. I do.
Okay. Yeah.
I think he'll be top 10 because you just go through, would you put anybody on Ohio State ahead of him? Would you put anybody at Texas ahead of him with the injuries that Quinn Ewers has had? Would you put anybody at Penn State ahead of him? Anyone at Notre Dame? Miami's quarterback. Tell me the difference.
Right.
Georgia, are you going to put Carson Beck over him? Tennessee, are you going to put anybody there over him? SMU. I mean, like Shane has a very logical point. I mean, the Boise State running back is a freak of nature. I mean, the guys that are getting the most buzz right now are not going to be participating in the college football playoffs. So, I don't see any way that he doesn't receive votes. I mean, I don't know. I don't think he'll be top 3 or be invited to New York. But when you see like the top 5, the top 7, the top 8, top 10, if they go that far, I think he has to be there.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. I think he absolutely deserves consideration. And, you think about what that's going to be able to do. Not only, I mean, even if he doesn't get the consideration, but what South Carolina can build off with him. That's a lot to sell to transfer portal recruits, high school recruits to be like, come, look how this guy played this, down the stretch, and he's playing his best ball. And I mean, he can throw the ball to you or hand the ball off to you. So, I mean, I think he absolutely agree. I do. I think he deserves consideration. And, just we keep saying he gets better and better, and he's just playing some incredible football right now.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, and this isn't going to sound great to Gamecock fans, but before we get out of here, Alex, let's just say that Gamecocks get snubbed. They don't get an opportunity to play in the college football playoff, and Oregon does not win the national championship. South Carolina wins their bowl game. At that point, going into next season in the Heisman, South Carolina has the longest winning streak in the nation. They have one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And we all know how important it is to start out higher in the preseason polls than it is to start out lower. And if you have a Heisman candidate and you have the nation's longest winning streak, everybody wants to see what the Gamecocks can do with their opportunity this year. And I think the Gamecocks deserve it personally.
Yeah.
I'd love to see that longest season. Yeah, I'd love to see that longest winning streak, have a national championship for South Carolina and the longest winning streak in the country going into next year. But Gamecock fans will always look back on that LSU game if they get snubbed, and that's a tough one for sure. But with that being said, Alex, let's get out of here for the night. Again, Joe should be back next Sunday. We wish him safe travels. As always, we appreciate all of you for joining us, watching us, listening to us, however you find us. When you do that, you give us the most valuable thing you have, which is your time. Never goes unnoticed, and we're so happy to spend this time of ours with you. So we say at the end of the show, go Gamecocks. Look forward to Gamecock men's and women's basketball this week. Alex and I will be here Wednesday at 8 to talk about all things Gamecocks, and we just wish you all the best rest of the holiday weekend and a great work week, or a retired week if you're retired. But we will talk to you all soon. Have a great evening.